I think I might do one next week where I just like walk through some of my process. I haven't done that before,
Yeah,
but I've been patiently waiting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I saw like one Eden, um, I think project of yours that once you shared on a newsletter. I think.
Yeah. I try to share them once every couple of weeks, do some actual behind the scenes project flows and things like that. Truth be told, I actually do them when I'm just really busy and I don't have time to write a really good newsletter. Because the
Yeah.
newsletter writing process for me is it's not like quick. I don't just whip one up in a couple hours. Like it usually takes me a couple of days if I really want to think it through, edit it, feel really proud of it. And sometimes when I'm traveling or when stuff happens in my business, I'm like, I just don't have time to do a massive thought leadership essay. And that's when I'm like, I'll just turn on the camera and I'll just do a video of something. It's my
Right.
escape hatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you usually go like section by section on the newsletter?
The way that I write newsletters is I come up with an idea that I feel is compelling enough and has enough tension that someone would want to read it. And then I tend to just brain dump or write down, here's all the things that come to mind about that
Mm.
idea, all the sub ideas, all the arguments, the stories. And it's just really messy. It's like stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
And then I have a Claude project called the Big Idea Bot. And I basically drop my my
Yeah.
whole like rough draft in there, and it categorizes it based on how much tension the idea has, and it helps me find the
Mm.
most tense version of the idea for the hook. And then it goes, okay, what's the sequence of ideas and how many other like powerful ideas can we fit in here in a natural way? And I just talk to it for like 30 or 45 minutes, being like, maybe this idea goes here and this here. And it helps me sequence it with a question answer chain. And then once that's done, it spits out like a big idea brief. And that's
Mm.
essentially the whole outline of how all these multiple ideas connect into one. And then I'll use that and I'll actually like write the the newsletter myself by like referencing the idea brief because it's thought through and it's more rigorous.
Right. So you basically like have a brainstorming session with Claude and it kind of spits out like a rough draft.
Yeah, kind of.
Or is it? No.
Well, because we can share screen, I could even like show you what it looks like if you like.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah. I've been using
Mm.
Claude a lot as well. Like it's incredible for like keeping brand consistency and um, brainstorming as well, I find.
Oh, it's incredible. I think a lot of people in the writing community, they just think that if you're using Claude, you're having it do the writing for you. But I think one of the most
Mm.
underutilized way to use AI is in the thinking process
Yeah.
to make it more rigorous. So here, I'll show you an example of what one of these briefs looks like when it's done. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
So this was an idea that I thought through when I was reading Nassim Taleb. It's called The Deep Problem of Academic Exposure. And it's basically about how you don't want to be just an academic. You want to be an academic artisan who's
Yeah.
actually like tinkering and building things and learning like an entrepreneur. So here's like the core idea. The education system doesn't just teach you, it installs a feedback loop that optimizes for approval instead of consequences from reality. Self-education doesn't fix this by default because you can read 300 books and still be running school software if nothing you learn faces real-world consequences. So then real intelligence develops only when the cost of not knowing comes from reality, markets, audiences, and nature, not authority figures. And then so like that's the kind of core idea for the next newsletter I was working on. And what's the big question? What if the thing you're most proud of, how much you've learned, is the exact thing keeping you from becoming genuinely capable? So in the
Mm.
intro, that is like the question I want to pose to the
Yeah.
reader.
Kind of the
Shows,
hook.
yeah, it's kind of like the hook, exactly. So it's the size of the belief shift. So this is big. What it means when you have a bigger belief shift is that it's more generative. So I think about ideas as claims with tension, and a small idea is shifting the content within your mind. So it's
Yes.
like, yeah, but then a big idea is actually shifting the structure of the mind. It
Mhm.
has you looking at something so differently that the content and the thoughts that generate from the idea become generative, and it changes the thoughts that you actually think. So this is a big shift because it doesn't just reframe one behavior like read less, do more. That would be like a small shift. It installs a new operating system for how you think about intelligence, how you learn, and how you structure knowledge acquisition. So that's when I'm writing an essay, I try to find like big shifts that are more generative if I can, but you can write really good stuff with just smaller shifts.
Yeah.
Going down like pull score, this is essentially how much tension it has, like how compelling is the idea? Does it challenge what people know? It says yes in a 9 out of 10. Does it stir something that they feel? Does it change what they do? And does it help them question who they are in a positive way? And then it gives an overall score out of 10. I usually aim for an idea above an 8 or I don't write it.
Right. And like Claude uses like what type of parameter to give you this score?
The way that I trained it is so I think of tension as a gap in the mind,
Yeah.
as emotions in the body, as a gap in behavior, or a gap in how you view yourself. So I have this whole knowledge base I put together from thinking through what would it mean to write with tension and create these 4 types of gaps for the reader as you're writing. And it scores the idea based on those 4 gaps. So if I present the claim of the idea and someone goes, I've never thought of that before, that's outside of like the
Mhm.
structure of my mind, then that increases the tension score. If when that happens, they feel a little uneasy or dissonant, they're like, oh, I need to know the answer to this. And then when they do feel the answer, they feel resolution, then that increases the pull score. If it has them questioning who
Right.
they are, like, oh, I think that I'm really smart because I went to school, and then they finish reading the piece and they're like, actually, wow, that's incomplete. I need to go to school and learn by like thinking and tinkering. Then it like changes their self image. So that increases the pull score as well. So those are like a few things that are factored into doing this.
Right. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, yeah, go ahead. Like, were you going to?
Yeah, I can show you like a few more pieces of it. It's pretty long, so I won't go through the whole thing, but it
Yeah.
gives you like some recommendations for the intro here. What's the common belief and the core belief shift that you actually want to achieve throughout this whole newsletter? So that's more of a reference for me. Why it works gives me some content to write about. Um, the dark, the darkness phase is it's essentially like before you give the answer to the big central tension of the newsletter, you want someone
Right.
to really want it and crave it. So that's what this is. So it says about 60 to 70% through, the reader has to accept a certain degree of beliefs and they have to be ready to make a change. Otherwise, when you give them the answer, they won't value it. So this is
Right.
showing how I need to do that closer to the end. It's showing the identity that needs to be shifted. And then it actually has the skeleton outline, which was what I brain dumped into Claude and like worked out with it. So this is the
Mhm.
big central paradigm shift. And then you see it goes through the 3 kinds of stupid. Then it goes to a diagnostic level, what real learning is, the more articulate version of stupid, why smart feels like enough, the school operating system. And it just walks through all of those. And then as you go down, it gives you an actual detailed breakdown of each idea with common belief, belief shift, size of shift, its role in the architecture and where the pull comes from. And this is what I reference when I actually write the newsletter. I'll look at this and be like, okay, so that's kind of what I have to say in this section. This is like the shift that needs to happen. That's the role. All right. And then I'll sit down and I'll write it.
Yeah. What? Have you ever read the book called Storynomics?
No, I've never read that actually.
Yeah, it's a book that goes into a bit of like the storytelling structure to like applied to marketing, and it goes through some of those phases that you described, particularly that darkness phase. Um,
Hmm.
it goes through that, and it's a very interesting book. I forget the name from the author, but it's a very known one. I think he wrote like another book called just Story or something. I don't remember who.
I'll have to check it out. The more that I get
Yeah,
into writing, it a lot of structures are basically story structures at the end of the day,
yeah,
even if you're not telling a story. It's kinda similar, like, there's a problem, but you need a solution. You feel uneasy, but you wanna feel, comforted or you wanna feel solid. There's something you think about yourself and it's incomplete and you want to feel more complete by the end. Like they're all just kind of like an arc from some type of negative or incomplete to some type of positive or complete or some form of resolution. So I guess like at the end of the day, it all is story. So I'll have to
yeah,
read that book.
yeah. Well, what it talks about that I find that you kind of nailed in this Claude project is he talks about what gives kind of value to an idea or a belief, and he describes in the book
Mm.
that what gives value to to an idea or what makes us kind of feel something is the contrast between like the contrast between ideas. So like if you go from love to hate or from hate to love in a shift like you did, um, that's what kind of signals that emotional response, and that's what kind of makes a story stick in our minds. That's what he goes into the book.
I could see that being the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the biggest failure modes that I see with students that I coach on how to write better is they have a hard time letting the reader feel uncomfortable before giving
Mm.
them the answers, which is why their knowledge never really sticks. But even after being a college teacher, I've learned that students and just people in general don't follow the advice or value the answer unless they like actually want it first. So the whole
Yes.
job of a good newsletter or one of the core jobs is to make people actually value the resolution that you're moving them towards. And that's a whole different set of writing skills than most people teach. It's not just here's a problem, here's a solution. There's actually a whole part in between. It's not here's like what happened after the story was done. It's well, can you even get them invested enough in the characters and in the story to want the answer at the end? That's where I think the really good writing exists. And at the end of the day, it boils down to tension in my model, at least. If you have enough tension, they're going to want the tension to be relieved.
Yeah. We kind of get got a hot. Sorry. We kind of get um, a bit of a spoiler right in the beginning of the this live from how you work, but I wanted to first begin by asking you kind of a personal question that came up like during this week that we were going to do the podcast, which is I see that you use a lot of manga panels on your Substack. I, I commented on a reference that you made with Griffith from Berserk.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you, like, how, like, why mangas? Like, how, where does this fit in with your writing and how maybe they shaped you or inspired you? Because as a fellow like Berserk fan, it kind of impacted me or traumatized me a bit. So just I'm just curious about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So the thing with mangas is I got really into anime the past few years, but
Yeah.
there's so many animes that are going to take forever until they're done. And I just wanted the answers to the stories. Like, how do these stories end? I don't want to wait years for like the next season. So I decided to start reading manga. Just so I read like Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen. And then I was like, oh, I actually kind of enjoy reading manga as a way to like tune out at the end of the day. I didn't find it quite as gripping as getting into a novel where you're just so addicted
Mm.
you can't put it down. But I found it to be the perfect way just to crawl into bed, turn my brain off, and just like read Japanese comics, basically, for anyone who doesn't know the context of what we're talking about. And while I was reading a bunch of these, I just thought a lot of the art was cool. So I was taking pictures of it on my iPad. I was like, oh, that's a cool picture. That's a cool picture. And then one day I was sitting down to write a newsletter and I would usually put graphics in my newsletter. Like I would create custom graphics and diagrams and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I just feel too lazy to do it. Like, I just hate creating graphics for my newsletter.
Yeah.
It's not fun. And I was like, but I feel like I need some type of visual component, and I'm not sure what I should do. And I was like, other people do memes, but I don't like doing memes or GIFs. Like, that's not my style. And then I was like, well, I have some cool manga panels because I just had taken like hundreds of pictures of them after reading so many mangas. I was like, maybe I could think of it more thematically. Like, is there a manga panel that, in terms of vibe, would fit this part of the newsletter? And
Mm.
I just threw like 2 or 3 of them in, and I was like, oh, actually, like, this works. It's like a vibe. It's different. No one else is doing it. And then people started messaging me, and they're like, oh, it's really cool that you do the whole manga thing. And then they'd message me, oh, you're reading Berserk. I love Berserk. And I started having conversations with a bunch of people about different mangas.
Yeah.
And it just accidentally became like a trademark of mine. Not because it was something I ever intended on doing. It was just that I was too lazy to do a diagram that one day. And now it's just stuck as a thing that I do. But it's fun. It's one of my favorite parts of the newsletter. I finish writing it, and then I sit down and I go through my phone. I have like probably 1,000 manga panels from all the things I've read, and I just like scroll through and look for ones that I think would fit.
Yeah. That's very interesting because like most people would look at something like manga panels and passion for anime or even some types of novels, and they would think that like it's impossible to talk about that or to actually like write about that. But you are kind of um, mixing your passions or your interests with like a hard skill or something that kind of brings value to people. So then it's kind of like you're inceptioning the idea of manga into people.
Yeah.
But that's a cool
Yeah.
way to do it.
Yeah. My actual dream, like what I really want to do is write fiction.
Mm,
And to do that, I'm a visual thinker. So there's a lot of stories in my head, but I would want to be able to draw the core scenes. So I started like in part reading manga and continuing to read manga because I liked thinking about how they were conceptualizing a story, like a minimum viable story. It's like minimal dialogue and some pictures. The same way that if you were going to go create a film, you would have storyboards for all the main scenes. So I started making the connection. The minimum viable story, if you were to produce like a film or an anime or a TV show, is storyboards with a script. It's like, well, I know writing, so I could learn script writing, I think, quite fluently with some practice, but I don't know drawing enough to do the storyboards. And that connection started happening when I started adding the visuals into my newsletters. I'm like, why wouldn't there be a visual component to what I'm saying? Something that would even just make someone feel something. And my goal is to learn to draw eventually so I can actually draw my own visual components into my newsletters and actually like start to bring them to life more naturally. So that was like a connection that happened. And I think people think, oh, my other interests can't be included in what I write about because they're too different. But it just depends on what you lead with.
mm,
People get confused with a brand when you're always leading with things that seem to conflict. So someone talks about cooking in a post and then running in another post and then writing and then video. And the audience goes, I don't understand what I'm following this person for. But
yeah.
if you're a brand that talks about creativity, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, look, this idea around what creativity is. Creativity is like smashing unconnected things together. Well, then you could say, well, when you're cooking, look at how there's like this unique pizza that's in Italy and it's smashing unique things together. Look at how maybe CrossFit is like smashing these unique exercises together. Look at how this author or creator is smashing like manga with writing. And now you can talk about those 3 things because it makes sense as proof points when you're talking about creativity.
Yeah.
So you can talk about multiple interests as long as you figure out what's primary and what you want to be kind of known for and what the umbrella thing is that everything else sits underneath. And then you can use all the different references, proof points, connections. You can use as many as you want because it'll just reinforce your core ideas.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I always like to think about um, having kind of a mission,
Hmm.
and everything that you can choose as a topic that will help someone achieve a certain goal, which is your mission, can be used as content for your personal brand. So always try and think of topics or um, certain um, media, even, or interests, and think, does this help someone get to the point where I'm like get to the dream that I'm selling? Because you always want to sell kind of a dream outcome for someone, or a dream future, or a dream identity even. So then if I can help someone with some type of different knowledge or insight, or even a like a personal experience, like I can fit that into my content. It's cool that you do that.
I completely agree. The future identity being the most powerful one.
Yeah.
I've been thinking through recently what is most valuable to people. Like what is the value that a creator can provide? And I actually have a graphic for this. Funny, we were just talking about how I hate creating graphics, but I actually have a
Yeah.
graphic for this one thing. Um, let me see here. Is it this one? Yeah, I think it is. So a lot of people get stuck and commoditized as writers, storytellers, and creators because they're not aligning with what is actually the most valuable thing, or like what's seen as valuable in the current market for a creator. I just have to. Okay. This graphic, I might have to zoom in on this. It's pretty. Can I even zoom in on it? Oh, I can. There we go. All right. I'll share my screen. Okay. You can see this?
Yes.
Yeah. So I call it the creator value hierarchy. So basically, at the very bottom of what is not very valuable as a value proposition, if you're a creator, is what I call regrettable entertainment. The stuff that, you scroll on Instagram or TikTok and you instantly regret it. You're like, I just wasted 3 hours of my life. That stuff gets
Yeah.
attention, but it's like, it doesn't lead to people having like true brand a lot of times. Next, because we're talking about value creators, is commoditized information. So it's tips, guides that anyone could share, especially in the AI age. This isn't very valuable. But above that is curated information. So it's you reading 10 or 20 books and being like, here are the 3 core things that you need to know from these books. And you just saved people time of reading all these books and you curated the insights. But the problem is it's still not unique to you. So it doesn't build quite as much brand. And it's still a skill that is easier to commoditize because it just takes somebody doing the work of reading multiple books and saying, here's the curation. So
Yeah.
above that, this is where you start to get like really valuable creators is proprietary knowledge, where it's your own frameworks and things that you've learned from coming into contact with the problem. So this would be like me teaching writing, where I actually think of the arc of writing as an identity transformation arc. And when I was showing that to one of my coaching students a little while ago, he goes like, where did you learn this? Like, what book did you read? I was like, what book? Like, dude, I just figured this out from doing like writing and trying to like actually transform people on an identity level. And it
Yeah.
became proprietary knowledge. So that's not something you would learn from a book. It's something you would only learn from someone like myself who came into contact with reality and created my own framework or model. So this is where you get really valuable or more valuable and less commoditized as a creator or a writer. The next one here is orientation, which is very undervalued in the creator economy. It's giving people a reason to adopt a new identity or take new action. If there's all this information and people don't know, like, okay, I have enough information that if I know what direction to go in, I can figure things out on my own, but they still don't do anything and they don't take any
Mm.
action. So your goal isn't to give them more information. It's to give them a reason to finally do something. And that's why orientation is so valuable. But it takes a completely different set of skills. It's actually learning persuasion, like what gets people to start taking an action, what changes people's mind. These skills are harder to commoditize because they're harder to learn. So that's why
Right.
orientation is up here with proprietary knowledge. And it's even above it because if you have proprietary knowledge and interesting things to teach people, but you can't give them a reason to care about it and want it, then this doesn't have value anymore.
Mhm.
So orientation is above that. Above orientation, the next thing is identity transformation over time. So if your content over time changes how people view themselves and who they become, that is like peak value. And then above that is what I call intellectual property or enduring creative work. This would be like the Almanac of Naval Ravikant as like a nonfiction book. Like Atomic Habits would be an intellectual property. Dune is an intellectual property. It's a fiction book about basically politics. So it's like a nonfiction idea wrapped in a fiction wrapper. And typically, if you follow creators through their journey, they actually go through this arc. Like, let's look at Dan Coe. Dan Coe has proprietary knowledge. He's orienting you to take new behavior that over time you change your identity and become a creator. And now he's creating books and software as intellectual property. Let's look at Alex Hormozian.
Yeah.
He has proprietary knowledge that orients how people do business, changes who they are into business owners, and he has books that are intellectual property. So if you follow like that arc over time, almost any popular creator slowly goes to the very top and then becomes hard to commoditize.
Yeah. It's interesting that it kind of goes into like storytelling again because it kind of look like a world building process. And at the
Yes.
end, you have your own kind of brand that is your own world, sort of.
Dude, it's exactly it. I have a friend who just him and his wife just did basically a new offer called world branding. It's that exact
Okay.
concept. It's like, how do you bring people into a world, and like your brand is a world with like all these different pieces. So you're 100% right.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic that I also like fiction. I don't know
Mm.
if you're much into like gaming, but um, I always find very interesting how the creator of Dark Souls kind of creates his own worlds, and I took some of like the things that he does into my own brand building as well. So it's interesting to pick from different sources of kind of creative storytelling. It's
Yeah. I agree. The Miyazaki, the creator of Dark Souls, is one of my biggest
Miyazaki, that's his name.
inspirations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love all the Dark Souls games, Elden Ring, Bloodborne. Bloodborne's my favorite one.
Mm,
But yeah, he's a creative genius as far as I'm concerned. And it's crazy that he's one of his biggest inspirations is Berserk.
yeah,
Yeah.
it shows.
So cool. Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. Very cool.
But talking about this hierarchy that you created, one question that I wanted to ask you, and I think a lot of the people who are in this live right now, they are writers or they identify as someone that want to be a full-time writer. How would you go about um, maybe guiding someone that is at a different stage, like at three different stages of their writing career? Like if they have no expertise, or if they have some expertise, and if they already have like a business or a proper brand, you could say. How do they become a full time writer in these three stages?
Yeah, the way that I think about that is in the beginning, if you don't have any skills, it will be hard. And I get this pushback from writers quite a bit. Like, hey, I really need to make good money. I need to do it right now. I haven't really written before, but how do I make like 5 to 10K? And I'm like, man, in what world do you get to just make good money and not learn things? Like that's
Yeah,
insanity. Like it's not a thing. And even if you're someone who's like written a book and done a lot of writing, this like I don't mean to like confront you on this, but just because you've written a book doesn't mean you're a good writer, and it doesn't mean you've written a good
yeah,
book. It just means you've sat down and you put in the hours. So you do have to acquire skills first. And if you're a beginner who's never made money from your writing, I think the first thing you should do is prove to yourself that you can do it. And that's where a paid Substack can be really valuable. Not as the
Yeah.
actual money maker to make full-time income, but just as the thing to prove to you, like, look, somebody paid me $5 or $10 to join my paid newsletter. Like, that can be life-changing to see, like, that you can prove to yourself, like, look, we've actually made money with this.
Yeah.
So that's the first step is the proof. You need skill acquisition and proof. As you acquire more skills, what I would recommend doing next, it kind of splits into two paths. So it's hard for me to like to put it in one. But if I was to put it in one, I would say find something to do with writing that you can sell for even like $500. So this could be ghostwriting somebody else's social content, ghostwriting a newsletter for them. It could be another writer who's like, hey, can you teach me how to write better? And you just charge like $500 for 2 months. Now, is this life-changing income? Actually, for many people, it would be. Like that's a
Yeah.
lot of extra money. It's like, especially if you can manage to use social media and attract 2 to 3 clients per month, all of a sudden that's like a part-time job. And the reason I like that strategy is it then gives you the opportunity to step away from your full-time hours and have more time to dedicate to writing. So it's not about just taking the leap. It's about, can I even make part-time income from having a cheaper writing-based offer? And then once you get more skills and more experience, you'll be able to raise your prices. And that's when you can start charging $3,000, even upwards of $10,000 for writing, like ghostwriting, for doing copywriting, writing books. Pretty sure I know of someone who charges $200,000 per book that she ghostwrites. And she only does like one every year. So just one new client, 200 grand on ghostwriting one book. Like that's great. But she also went to school like for writing, and she's very well networked and has a lot of experience. So you can get there over time. The true thing that I'm showing here is it requires learning skills, becoming better at writing and be able to get outcomes with writing, and then getting experience and proof and learning how to attract your own clients. And you pretty much have to do it in some type of order like that.
Yeah. There's a book called, I think it's Million Dollar Weekend or something like that. And it goes into
Yeah.
how can you validate your ideas kind of as fast as possible so you
Mhm.
know if they are worth it. And it kind of ties into what you said because like I think a lot of people and myself included, and I had to kind of snap out of it. We complicate too much client acquisition, but it's really just asking someone, hey, is this idea like valuable for you? And if someone is willing to pay, as you said, for a Substack that you write, that's kind of a validation that your ideas have some value. Like they might not be um, like $1,000 value yet, or they might, but that's a validation. And this book kind of goes into asking someone to kind of finance your project. So you ask like friends, hey, I'm starting this business. Can you invest like $10? And if it's useful for you, you can like have a test drive or a free month, And if they pay, it's kind of like, okay, now I have money, like some kind of money, maybe not a lot, but I have the validation, and then I can now have the portfolio to kind of build my own business and my own brand. So I think that's a very valuable strategy that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I love what you're saying here because it's not sit down, plan, figure out what's going to work, have this like massive thought through way of doing things, and then you go and figure it out. That's actually like that is the wrong way to do it. Like it's
Yeah,
a recipe for wasting time and
yeah,
resources and energy. Um, the right way is just to go talk to people. And it's
Yeah.
so funny because I had a business mentor once who just laughed at me. I was like, I'm trying to figure out what to release for the next product that we're going to do, and I don't know. And he just says, how many of your previous customers or how many people have you talked to about this? I was like, well, no one. I've just been kind of working on it for 3 months, thinking it through. He goes, well, that's just stupid. Like, you just wasted 3 months. Why don't you just go talk to people? So I just
Yeah.
hopped on 15-minute calls with 30 people. And that took a while. It took me a couple weeks. I was doing a lot of calls. And then it was instantly obvious what I should make. Like, they just told me, here's what we want, here's what we don't want. I was like, oh, there we go, perfect. The market just told me. How this looks like in the Substack age is have a paid newsletter, experiment with like different value propositions in regards to writing or other things that you could do, get people on the paid newsletter, and then DM every single one of them, say, hey, like, thanks for joining. Like, I want to make this as valuable as possible. What would be most valuable for me to create next for like free newsletter issues? And then if they're open to it, like, get on calls with them and just chat with them and ask them what they want. You'd be surprised at how quickly you will figure out what the real value proposition is and the real thing that people want help with. It's
Yeah.
it's so valuable. You can even do that with your free subscribers too. It doesn't have to be paid. Paid just have a little bit more skin in the game. So they have a little bit of money down. They're more likely to be like, this is what I really want. Free, they might tell you all kinds of crazy stuff. So you have to filter through the
Yeah.
information a bit more, but it works the same way.
Yeah, man. I've been learning a lot about that lately because I joined Substack in January, so it's very recent. I've been writing ever since like I was, I don't know, middle school or something. I always kept
Mhm.
kind of a notebook, but I never actually thought like someone would um, kind of take the time to read something I would write. And then when I started Substack, I'm I met a lot of people that were writing, and that kind of gave me uh, a bit more motivation to kind of keep writing. And
Mhm.
then, like, just through this feedback loop of having people that read your newsletter and then they talk with you and they share their ideas, I kind of noticed a few ideas that started to make sense for some people. And then when someone like just suddenly uh, bought like my first like when I got my first paid newsletter, I was like, huh, that's interesting. I never thought this particular idea, and it was a idea of having multiple interests, which was the topic
Nice.
that you were, uh, I think, on a live. Um, it was Saturday, maybe last Saturday. Um, so it's kind of weird that we sometimes spend more time planning to avoid problems, but we don't know what those problems are yet because we haven't started. So we only learn what the problems that we need fixing when we start.
Yes. It's like, instead of trying to avoid the problem by all this thinking and studying, just come into contact with it as soon as possible. It's like rush into the problem. Like, I say to my coaching clients when it comes to Substack that you want to think of each newsletter as like throwing a dart at a bullseye, and you want to try to get closer to a bullseye each time. Because there's some really great newsletters that my clients have written that I've read them and thought these are really good. And then they post them and they're like, it didn't do very well. I need a new idea. That idea didn't work. I'm like, whoa, like, hold on. That doesn't mean you should throw the baby out with the bathwater here. That newsletter is a great newsletter. It's the title didn't hit. Maybe the way we talked about it didn't hit. Maybe the picture didn't work. We need to try that again. So instead of like always writing something new, it becomes, how do I take the things that I'm most proud of writing and the ideas that I'm most excited about and try to figure out how to frame them so people actually care and actually click and actually read. So it's, you write that newsletter, it doesn't work. No one pays attention. All right, 3 weeks later, you come back to it. Let's try a new hook. Let's maybe do a new intro. You improve it. Now let's post it again. That's throwing another dart at the bullseye. And, sometimes you get closer. Sometimes you move further away. There's times that I've had stuff that worked and I've changed a couple sentences and it's made it way worse. It doesn't always it's not always improvement. It's just iteration. And over time, you'll eventually, if you try enough times, you'll write that newsletter. It will get like quite a bit of attention. It'll be an outlier. And then you add it to like a database of, okay, here's my newsletters that have done the best. I finally found like the bullseye version of this idea. If you do this for years and then you're eventually recycling all the bullseyes, that's when it's like viral hit, viral hit, viral hit, viral hit, and you start doing extremely well. It's that people don't recycle and try again on the ideas that didn't work. They just are always trying new things. And it's very hard to find things that work. And then they wonder why they can't consistently have good performance.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And how do you go about um, kind of testing ideas on your Substack or on your newsletter? Like, is there a process for you to kind of see if an idea is worth writing besides the Claude project?
Yeah. Well, first off, I would say Notes is the best testing ground. You do need a bit of an audience to truly start to test and see what works. But like some of my newsletters that have done the best are because I had a Substack note that did really well with that topic. And I'm like, okay, if it did well as a note, it'll do well as a newsletter. So Notes is a good testing ground because you can do 3 to 5 notes a day. When something pops off and does really well, that's your sign that maybe you should write about it next. And you could even take the first line of the note and maybe use that as the title if it's good enough. You can't always do that. It depends on the note. But that's one way to
Yeah.
test. The next way is when you do your newsletter, try split testing headlines because you can actually have multiple headlines when you schedule the newsletter. So you can do like 3 to 5 tests. I probably do 3 and see which one gets the highest open rate. So Substack will send out all 3 to a portion of your list. The one that gets the most amount of opens will then get sent to the rest of your list. So that allows you to test 3 different shots at that idea in one go. So that's a good way to test. But I would say most of the testing comes from the title and the picture. Like 80% of the performance of if people will even click in and read just comes from the title. So a lot of times just swapping the title out is a good enough test. But if you get a bunch of people that click in, but you don't get a bunch of subscribers, that's usually a signal that people clicked and then they stopped reading or it didn't move them. So that's a problem with the actual piece. So it's tricky because you have to be able to isolate the variables, but I think of it as, are people even clicking on this newsletter, which you can see in the back end of Substack? If the answer is no, the title's not good enough, or not enough people are seeing it, you don't have distribution. So it's either bad title, not enough people seen it in the first place for it to actually pop off. If both of those things are solved and you're not getting subscriber conversion and people aren't sharing it once they initially click in, then it means the content is bad and the substance isn't there. So you have to rewrite the body. Those are a few simple ways to do it, but I'd be getting in the weeds if I went further than that.
Yeah. Yeah, these are good ways. Kind of changing the topic a bit. If I were a writer like today and I just wanted to get into kind of making money from my writing like the next month, what could be some career paths that you see for writers today?
Um, it's typically writing to achieve an outcome of some sort. I really think of it as there's only 2 ways to make money with writing. There's writing as product and writing as service. Writing as product is where you create something using writing, and then that writing is sold as a product. So that would be like a book. The other way is writing as service, which is I'm going to do ghostwriting for you. I'll do copywriting for you. I'll do editing for you. Could even be I'll coach you on how to be a better writer. Those are more like writing as service. The thing that I think most people misunderstand about the writing industry is they think the only way to make money as a writer is writing as product, and that happens to be the hardest way to make money as a writer. And it's very hard to sustain yourself. You need so much traffic. You need to be so good at marketing. So it's very difficult. Writing as a service is the easiest and most sustainable way to earn a living as a writer. because you can charge higher prices, and the writing tends to lead to outcomes such as money, influence, subscribers, and things like that. So you're more defensible because if someone's making more money than they pay you, it's going to be a lot easier to sustain that. And you're not reliant on traffic from algorithms or things like that to try to sell more books.
Yeah.
So that's what I would recommend is I would actually start with writing as service if you wanted to make a full-time living off of writing as soon as possible, and then work up to being able to live off of writing as product.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I don't know. I haven't read the novels from Stephen Pressfield. I only read his kind of more tactical books, you could say. But it's an interesting balance that he has these like two types of books. But what we usually hear most about is the books that he kind of delivers value. It's kind of writing as a service. So I think that's an important, like, it can be a step for like writers to then transition to writing as a product, as you said. But it can also be like a two-way door. I don't know, like Stephen Pressfield. I think he started with writing as a product, right? I don't know.
I believe I know who you're talking about. The guy who wrote the War of Art and
Yeah,
Turning Pro, right? Yeah.
yeah,
So just to make sure we're not conflating two things, the nonfiction books are still writing as product. And I
okay,
believe that Pressfield he tried making money off of writing as product with his fiction novels for a while, and he wasn't able to succeed. And then I think he actually took on like writing as service based jobs whenever he ran out of money. I think he talks about that in the War of Art or Turning Pro. I haven't read them in a while, so I don't want to like butcher the details. But he did both until writing his product. He was able to create something good enough and get enough marketing behind it with the right idea that he was able to earn a living from it, is my understanding. So it's similar to the model that I described. It's that he tried to do writing as product first. It was very difficult and he wasn't good enough and he couldn't get enough distribution and sales. So he had to do writing as service to pay the bills. And then he kept trying with writing as product until it worked. Um,
right.
so it's even the nonfiction book is just productized version of the service or of the,
Yeah,
yeah, it's essentially what that would be. But it is tricky. Like it's hard. And I feel for people because my goal is to, as I said, just be an author in the future
yeah,
and to live off of book sales. I'm just aware of how difficult it is, even for my friends who are like millionaires and they're financially free and they're writing books under like big publishers like HarperCollins. Some of them still struggle to make a full-time living off of book sales. And they're like
yeah,
they're just doing that. It's not that it's impossible. Like it's totally possible to do it. I just believe in being smart in the approach and not trying to like bet on that in the beginning when it's going to be very, very hard. That's why I have a ghostwriting agency and now I have other people who are writing for me at the agency and I'm automating myself out of it, and things like that. And I'm building my paid Substack up to have like full part-time income off of just the paid Substack alone. And then I'll have time. Like, okay, like these things pay my bills. Now I can do writing as product. I can write these books from a place of abundance and not scarcity. And if it takes me 5 or 10 years to pull this off, it doesn't matter because I make money through other means. That's just the path that I've chosen because I don't like being a starving artist. I did that as a
yeah,
musician in my early 20s and it sucked. I don't want to do it again.
yeah. How, uh, like, how would you kind of show the value of marketing your own work for a writer? Because uh, at least from the circles um, that I am with writing, I hear a lot of writers complaining about having to market their own skills and their own books, and oh, I have to have a social media and I have to post videos and I have to post content. But like, it seems to me that you kind of always had to market your value. It was just that someone was the intermediate um, to do that before, but now you can do it on your own and kind of free-ish. But how would you kind of articulate that?
Well, like first off, I feel for people that don't want to market and promote and that they hate it. Because I come from someone who was a musician at a record label, and the label is like, you need to promote, you need to do social media. And I was like, I just want to write music. Like, I don't want to be Facebook famous or Instagram famous, right? And it just seemed like the thing that was in the way of me doing the thing I wanted to do. Like, I just want to write, I just want to create. And now I have to create all this stupid marketing stuff that I don't want to do. Over time, I've changed my mind on this a little bit. I no longer see them as separate things. I think they're just different manifestations of the same creative expression. Like
Mm,
if you put your heart and soul into a book, into developing your skills, and you're proud of like what you've created, you're proud of your value, like I believe you should want more and more people to see it. And you should be
yeah,
excited about how do I communicate this value to people and see that as a fun problem to solve instead of something that impedes you. This isn't sit down and write some cringy sales piece. Hey, buy my book. Like, yeah, that stuff's not fun to write because it's not authentic. It's not you. It's not like what you really care about. Like for example, with nonfiction, it could be how do you take the core chapters of the book and do the core ideas as articles and test them and see how well they can do on social media. And that can inform you writing the book or writing your next book. Like, not many people know that, like, Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, a lot of the ideas in those books were actually tested as blog articles before they made it into the
mm,
book. They didn't just sit down and write the book. They're like, okay, let's actually put this out there. Let's communicate my ideas with people and see what resonates and let the market and my readers inform what should go in this book. That's not different from writing the book. That's writing the book in public.
yeah,
You could even do this with fiction. You could start a fiction writing club or a community, and you could share ideas of your chapters and your characters, your thought process with people in the community. You could do articles of, hey, I'm writing a character and I'm struggling with it, but here's how I'm thinking about writing the character. Here's what I recommend. What do you think? And you could start dialogue about it. And this could be an active process. The problem is people think of marketing as this like cringy, like buy my stuff thing. They don't realize that the creation of the product itself is the marketing material. You're just not sharing it publicly and inviting people into that world, like you were saying
yeah,
earlier. Like there's like this writing on Substack and all this stuff can be fun when you see it as I'm still writing about the ideas that I care about. And I'm learning to see how they resonate with people, and I'm attracting like-minded people, and we're talking through the creation of this product. Like that's an
yeah.
incredibly fun thing to do. So I think it's about reframing promotion as not completely separate from the creative process, but just a complementary skill that allows you to refine the products that you're creating as a writer.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And it kind of relates to me a lot because I was planning on writing a book called The Splinter in the Mind, which is about kind of that feeling that you get that you should be doing something more. Like it's that kind of creator calling or something like that. And the way that I reframed that is I'm kind of writing the book right now on Substack, but it's kind of an infinite book. So
Mm,
every newsletter that I do is kind of an exploration of a topic to kind of test the ideas for the book. So it's kind
mm,
of what you said. And
yeah,
it really helped a lot to not think that I'm just selling my soul to get views or to make money. Like it really, really helps. And another thing that I think happens to a lot of creators, and it happened to me for more than 10 years because I started creating content when I was 10 years old and I never
mm,
got over like 200 subscribers. But once you kind of get a feedback that your writing or your content impacted someone, that kind of reframes your passion a bit, because it's not that much about the content or the format of your writing, but the impact that you have on people. And that gave me like a huge boost because I never wanted to be
Mm,
perceived as someone like, oh, I'm doing content. Oh, I'm doing a course. I'm doing info products, you know.
yeah.
But then when people started to get value out of that, I was like, okay, so that's kind of my passion. It's not that much um, the way I do it, but like this impact that it might have on people, that these ideas might have on people.
I love that, dude. It's it's true. When you start putting your ideas out there and you get positive feedback or have people DM you and say, "Oh, you've really changed my life and how I view these things." Like that is like, "Oh my god, I'm already doing the thing." Like I'm already
Mm.
writing and impacting people with it. Maybe it's not in the form of a book, but even in the form of Substack essays, is so fun. Like I love writing Substack articles each week. It's not a cringy self-promotion thing. So I love where you're coming from, that it just takes a few people to resonate with what you're saying and doing, and it can change your whole trajectory as a writer
Yeah.
and an author. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Um, I think we're coming to time. But I have kind of a last question for you because we
Mhm.
talked about how to kind of start as a writer and probable career paths. But one thing that I see a lot of writers struggling is how they articulate the value of their ideas. How would you like maybe guide someone or give like an insight on how to articulate the value of an idea?
Big question. Um, there's a few things. I'll give you one big tip of how I'd think about this is, you can write about anything you want, like any idea, as long as you can make it relevant to readers. And a lot of the writers that I see struggling, including my past self, don't think about it this way. They just, as much as I hate to say it, I'm going to challenge some writers a bit. They write from a place of entitlement.
Yeah.
And I'm calling out my past self. The entitled writer is, I want to write about what I want to write about in the way that I want to write about it. And I want people to care and to read my stuff and to come back every week and be excited about it too. And I'm just calling out my past self here. It's like, that is so entitled. Like you don't get to do that. Like some people get lucky and they do write about the things they want to write about in the way they want to write about it. And people just love it. There are those people. That's not everyone though. So the way that I learned how to write about anything that I care about is, how do I make it relevant to other people? And that usually is changing the entry point into the idea. So for example, the big idea brief I showed you earlier, the actual idea I had for that was, okay, it's something I called the think and tink method. Like if you are studying, you also need to be tinkering at the edge of what you're doing. So you need to be building things, writing things, testing ideas in real time, and never study in a silo. And then I was like, how do I get someone to care about this? Because I'm writing to writers, not people who are entrepreneurs. To tell an entrepreneur you need to be tinkering on things with asymmetric upside, like they just get it. Writers, that's a very new idea for them. So instead, I was like, okay, the entry point to the idea is that the way you've been taught how to learn is wrong. Relevant. It's just
Mm,
learning. The way you've been taught, like how to write and how to learn by school and academia, is incomplete because you're not tinkering enough. And that's how I made it relevant. So that's like how I think through it, is what is the entry point? What's the relevant, familiar thing that someone would be like, oh, I'm interested in that topic. And then once they start reading it, they're like, oh, I didn't expect that I was going to learn about this and this and this and this. And you're kind of like, it's like chocolate covered broccoli.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I didn't realize I was eating broccoli. I thought I was just eating chocolate. But like, then the broccoli goes down easier and you associate it with the chocolate. It's sweet.
Yeah.
That's how I think about it. If you're struggling with entry points, familiar entry points that tend to work are a goal that someone has, a pain point they're experiencing, a problem they're experiencing, a trend that they're into, a skill that they would love to acquire, or an interest that they have. Start with that in the hook and the intro, and then go wherever you want from there. And that would be my one piece
Awesome.
of advice.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. Um, Lastly, I don't want to kind of take too much of our time, but if you had one piece of advice kind of for yourself 5 years back, what would be the most important thing that you had to focus to get to where you are right now that you would give as advice for you 5 years back?
Um, it would probably just be focus on just building an audience and getting really good at it. Like, there's other things like just keep going because it has been hard. The past 4 years have had a lot of ups and downs to them and a lot of times that I thought about quitting, but quitting for me was never really an option. It was just, I need to get better at this. But if you get really good at building an audience and then talking to that audience to see what they would want from you, your life will just change so radically. It is one of the craziest asymmetric upsides humanly possible. Um, the skills that you'll acquire, the people that you'll meet, the job opportunities that will open up, like from just growing my Substack and other socials. I've met like entrepreneurs that if I needed to get a high paying job because my business went bust, like I could probably have one in a week. I
Same.
didn't have that before when I was a college teacher. I would have been like, oh shit, where am I going to go get another college teaching job? There's only so many of them. So I would just say like, just get really good at building an audience, get good at writing, get good at creating. It will change your life in ways that you will not expect.
I agree. Well, thank you, Taylin. I think that was an awesome podcast slash live. You got amazing advice, and well, I don't mean to glaze, but you are one of my favorite Substacks here. So it's been an honor to chat with you. And yeah, man, do you want to like direct people to some place or some product or event that might be coming up?
Um, I'm going to be doing a writing sprint next week that I'm really excited about. I haven't done something like this in like a year and a half. It's going to be how it's like my unique way to write really compelling newsletters. And I'm actually really excited just to work with a batch of fun students who are eager to learn newsletter writing from a new perspective. So I'll be talking about that next week. But other than that, yeah, thanks, man. Great questions. This was super fun. I love the dark vibe with the Steve Jobs in the background. So
Yeah.
this was awesome, man. I appreciate your time and for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. So that's it. See you and till next episode.
Sounds
Bye,
good,
man.
man. Peace. Bye, everyone.